What is fine art photography? I find as a photographer, many people don't realize how versatile and how significant photography is. And it goes so much further than the photography that you may have been exposed to, because many people have seen only one aspect of photography or one use, maybe two, of how you can use photography. And I think the most common forms most certainly are home photos, or whether it's wedding photos or anything, but kind of the photos you have of yourself and your life and your family and your friends. The other form of photography that a lot of people are exposed to in everyday life is photojournalism. Things that you'll see in magazines or newspapers. And maybe a third one is product photography. But we often don't even think of these things as separate things. Maybe the form of photography that is the least understood is fine art photography. Many people don't even know that that is something that exists, or maybe they've seen fine art photography, but they're not quite aware of what it really includes and the significance that it can hold. So what is a simple definition of fine art photography? In the simplest of terms, fine art photography is photography that you display and use as art in a similar way that you would display a sculpture or a painting. Now, fine art photography can be commissioned, same as you can commission art, but for the most part, fine art photography is actually made and inspired by the vision of the photographer. And it can be produced in various different forms. You can produce it in prints, individual prints that you sell. You can do multiple prints. You can do single prints, limited print runs, unlimited print runs. You can also do photography books. And many other mediums that you can do it. But the point behind fine art photography is essentially a photo which was taken and developed purely with the interest of creating art and displaying art. So the first question I want to look at is, what is the significance of that? What is the significance of fine art photography? Why does it matter? Why is this something that I think people should pay more attention to, and something that is undervalued by most people? One of the root problems is that people don't recognize photography as being art. And as a photographer, and you can talk to most photographers, they will tell you that photography is an art. It is 100% an art form. It may use modern technology and it may be a much newer art form, but it is still completely and totally an art form. So first of all, if you realize that photography is art, it becomes way more natural to start to understand that you get fine art photography, and that this is something which is actually way more common than people might think. You most definitely have encountered fine art photography at some point, whether you knew it or not. So going back to the significance of what is art, I think in society you get people that value art very, very highly, and then you get other people who tend to value practicality over art. And so it really does come down to your viewpoint on art and how significant you consider it to be. But I think art is both crucial to culture and it's crucial to mental well-being. It is integral to all parts of human life and community. Not only does art add to our daily lives, but art teaches us so many things that we could not learn in other ways. So in the same way that art in general is very important and significant to society, I think that fine art photography is equally important and significant to society. And because I'm a photographer, I'm slightly biased, and I think that it is a medium which needs to get more attention and garner more respect and significance in the art world, because in many ways it is still a very, very new art form. And even though there are some significant art collectors who collect photography and fine art prints, it is still a much smaller industry, both because it's so young and also because it is still trying to find a place that it is considered a legitimate art form. But I fully think that it is a legitimate art form and something that can and should be invested in more. And that leads us to the question of what can be fine art photography? What can be included in that category of photography? Because many people, when they think of photography and different types of photography, they might think of a landscape photographer or a portrait photographer or a product photographer. You could think still life or whatever different photography you've been exposed to, wildlife, nature, cityscapes. And the question is, what of that can be fine art and what is not fine art? Essentially, the short answer, all of it can be fine art. Any of it can be fine art. And I've seen some incredibly creative and beautiful artworks in many, many different forms and categories of photography that I would include in fine art photography. And really, again, it comes back to the intention behind the taking of the photo. Is it simply a photo taken to document and report on a scene? Is it a photo taken to document and remember for personal uses? Or is it a photo taken to create art which has significance beyond that moment, that carries a message, that has something to say in an artistic element? And so definitely, I think any photography can be fine art photography. It really depends on the photographer, what they're trying to deliver, what they're trying to do with that photo. How they do it is simply through that capturing that moment. And then you get to the point of post-production, which is another question. It's like, how does editing, and especially things like Photoshop, fit into fine art photography? And before I answer a yes/no question on that topic, I want to go back, because a lot of people who don't know, even photographers, don't always realize that post-production in photography is not new. Photoshop, Lightroom, different editing programs, how we do digital editing today was not invented with the digital age. Film photography had as much attention to detail and post-production as digital photography does today. It was done with very different tools, but if you know anything about the history of photography, or even just a little bit about film photography in general, how you develop the photos and how you manipulate the photos, even old film, movies and cinema, you'd be surprised at how much editing goes into that. And it's much more labor intensive because you have to manually do these edits. Nowadays you use programs even for film. But it's actually fascinating to look into the processes they had. So the idea of editing and post-production in photography is not new at all. Many photos that you see that are film photos, especially older ones, you might suspect had very little post-production, but they actually were just as manipulated in different fashions and ways as what we have today. So to then answer the question of how does post-production fit in with fine art photography, is it allowed in there? Is it something that disqualifies it from being fine art photography? Post-production is a massive, massive part of fine art photography. I almost want to say that it is a bigger part of fine art photography than it is any other type of photography. And obviously this does differ from photographer to photographer. But essentially, I'd say the type of photography that has the least post-production is definitely photojournalism and or sports photography, the things that have to get out there immediately. Like you take the photo and it's out within minutes or hours. Like it's the same day. You just take the picture, it has to be perfect out of the camera, there's no post-production, you just like maybe give it a crop or something and you put it in the article, or you display it on whatever media format you're using, whether you're putting it on social media or on a website or in a newspaper, print it out. It is the least amount of post-production simply because of time. It has to be super quick and get out there. And then you get things where you like hire a photographer for family photo shoots or a wedding or your own portraits, or maybe you do your business things. And that one I want to say is like a medium ground because it's usually a large amount of photos, but you definitely want to give some attention to post-production, and you want to do some editing, and it's usually more of like batch editing, and everything needs to kind of look the same. Then you get product photography, and I think that's a little bit more editing, and especially depending on how you want to do it and how you want to display your products, it can be even more editing and time gets put into that, and it can be very specific to individual photos. But then at the very, very most, and like I said, this does depend on your photographer and the artist that is creating this artwork. Some people want to have minimal post-production. I tend to lean toward that myself, but that is the area where you have the opportunity to take your time, slow down, and really produce the exact vision that you had in making this piece of art. And the photos that you often see that are associated with fine art photography, it definitely does not encompass all fine art photography, but it is very commonly associated when someone says fine art photography, are the photos that are highly edited and turned into something with a very precise vision, whether it is the things that are obviously photoshopped, I mean cleanly, very nicely done, but like things that you couldn't really create outside of Photoshop. Whether it is bringing different images together, making something out of multiple images, whether it is you have someone flying across the picture and you have to like remove cables and things, whether it is working with light and color. But yeah, you get the chance with fine art photography to really manipulate and turn it into that exact beautiful masterpiece that you're looking for. So editing does not in any way disqualify fine art photography. That being said, there are certain artists that their goal and their intention in making their photos is to have minimal editing, is to actually be that raw image that you're putting forth. And I do tend to be on that side, even though I do appreciate a certain amount of editing, and it definitely can enhance so many things in a photo, and it depends on what your vision is. But what I really like to do is I really like to create as much as I can in taking the photo, in preparation before taking the photo, and then only just enhancing that. I definitely will edit all my photos to some smaller degree, and really then producing that final result. So last of all, I just want to talk about like what formats do you produce your fine art photography, and what is common ways of selling your fine art photography. And I think maybe one of the most common ways that has become popularized in modern day is photography books, because it's easy format, and it's, especially since prints are something that people are not that used to. It's like you'll spend a lot of money to buy a painting to hang in your house. People are not yet really used to the idea of spending that same amount of money on a photography print and hanging that in their house. There's also the thought of like, there's not just one of these. There's multiple of these prints. With a painting, it's one and only, painting. And I'll get into that in a second. So I think that maybe the most comfortable idea, the idea people are the most comfortable with in fine art photography is buying photography books. And a lot of artists, whether they mainly do fine art photography or if it's more of a side thing, have invested in creating photography books. Then the other one that is also fairly common would be selling prints. One piece of advice that I would give to anyone that's like, I don't know where to buy fine art photography, this is completely brand new to me, is find out if you're buying prints, is it a limited number of prints, or is it the artist decided they're going to just print as many as they want for as long as they want? Because if the artist said, I'm going to do a limited run of this print, let's say you have a picture of a tree, and he said, I'm going to do, or she said, I'm going to do 10 prints, and I'm only selling 10 and I'm never doing more than that. If you have a limited run of prints, that increases the value of those prints, because that means that there are only 10 of these prints in the world, and they will only ever be 10 of these prints in the world. And so you can buy prints of all kinds of sizes and on different materials, whether it's on paper, whether it's on canvas. I think paper is definitely a higher quality print. You can have different format sizes, like it could be a smaller print, like I've seen prints this size, I've seen prints that size. Like it's really up to the artist to decide what format they want to put it in, what medium they want to print it on. But yeah, the most common ways for fine art photography to be made available is definitely in a photography book, or if you have individual prints. And I think both are really great. Both can demonstrate the work. I think what is really nice about a book is it gives more of a cohesive story and you have multiple photos in it. But what I absolutely love about prints, and I think I'm partial to prints, is that you get that incredible artwork, that piece that the artist has put so much effort into, time and thought, and you get to display that. And it is the same really as having any other artwork. And I just think photography is a great medium to be able to invest in. So let me know what your thoughts are on fine art photography, whether you guys have any more questions, whether I should do a part 2, and whether you like the idea. Would you invest in photography? Would you be willing to invest in prints, or are you more like, maybe if I get a photography book, if I really like the artist, or is it just absolutely not a thing for you? You're never say never, but you feel like you would probably never invest in photography as art. Okay, here we are today, and I'm ready to talk to you. What is fine art photography? Or don't, what? Jessica, what's another word for realize? Like they don't value? No. It's more like they don't value art, or they don't acknowledge photography as art. I've talked about this before, now I don't remember all the things I said. I should have written this stuff out.